All right, guys, welcome back to Everything College Football Podcast. Today, me and Nick will be looking at the Idaho Potato Bowl being played from Albertson Stadium in Boise. Utah State 1-point favorites. Saturday, December 23rd, 3:30 p.m. Eastern Time on ESPN. Looking at these offenses, start with Georgia State, a unit that's down some pretty significant talent. Leading rusher, Marcus Carroll had 1,300 plus yards. He's on his way to Missouri. While top pass catcher Robert Lewis, he's heading to Auburn. A lot of production they're missing here. Kelsey Williams, 46 grabs, 581, and 5 scores. He's going to have to really step up in this game, as Carroll was also the third leading pass catcher. Ja'Cory Carter, a talented player with no touchdowns this year, still has 34 grabs for 227. Claudarius Thompson, a senior pass catcher with 20 receptions for only $149. These are some massive players that are going to have to step up. Darian Granger's going to have a big game. Their third leading rusher and backup running back, KZ Adams. He's also in the transfer portal. Didn't really play much this year anyways. I don't even know who's going to get the nod at running back, Nick. They only used Carroll really all season long. He was a workhorse for him. Granger, though, a player that put up 2,300 yards passing with 17 scores, 625 rushing, and 8 more touchdowns to 7 picks. This is a player that I always expected kind of to pop out, and at certain times he did. But for the most part, less than stellar performance this season from Granger. Really did not take that next level step in the close out his college career. He's going to have to put on a complete clinic if he wants to win this game.
Certainly a tough uphill battle for Granger here. He's a solid quarterback, but just not quite the season that he had hoped for. 67% comp rate, 2,300 yards passing, 17 touchdowns to 7 interceptions. Really solid on the ground. Good numbers there, 625 and 8 scores for him. But like you said, losing Marcus Carroll and Robert Lewis, it could be a death blow to this team. Tyreek Williams is going to have to step up a wide receiver, 581, 12.6, and 5 touchdowns. Carroll was a great receiver for this team. Ja'Cory Carter is going to have to step up. He has no touchdowns. He had 27 yards receiving, 6.7. Kadarius Thompson's got to step up. Amon Green, he has 4 receiving touchdowns. He needs to step up. He has only 135-yard receiving. Freddie Brock, it looks to be the back to get the go. He's a redshirt a transfer, who is going to seem to get the go. He only played in 3 games this year, so I'm not entirely sure what the status on him is going to be at this point. This offense looks to be on its deathbed in this matchup. They're only averaging 25.8 points per game, 4.44 yards per carry, and all of that basically comes from their star back at this point in Carroll. This offense is certainly in dire straits here going against this Utah State defense.
They're also going to be without right tackle Montavious Cunningham as he's in the portal. This offensive line, was certainly better than most this season. Travius Glover at his left tackle spot. He's a pretty solid player for them. Avery Reese at center, pretty good pass blocker as well. You look at the Utah State offense, there's a lot to monitor here. 34 points per game for them. Quarterback position, obviously, there's a lot of injuries going on. Cooper Legas, good player for them. McCade Hillstead, he's also kind of banged up. Levi Williams, he's leaving to join the core. So you really don't know what you're going to get at quarterback here. The expectation is one of the top 2 will be playing in this game. I think they're going to be fine. There weren't really major injuries by any means since the season finale, and they got about 3+ weeks to get healthy. Really a month, I guess, at this point. So we'll have to monitor what happens there. I think that's why the line's so short. But look at these receivers. Jalen Royals, 68 grabs for 1,023 yards, 14 touchdowns. His counterpart, Terrell Vaughn, another 10 scores along with 81 grabs for 847. Micah Davis has 36 receptions for 628 yards and, leading the trio with 17 yards per catch. This is a nice receiving core, Nick. Very good at throwing the football. And, they've been very productive regardless of who's been at quarterback. But it's a big mystery who's going to roll out there with that first unit whenever the first kick drops.
It is certainly a mystery who's going to be leading this team. I think both quarterbacks have their flaws, but they're also both solid. I think Cooper Legs is probably the best one to start here. The 64% comp rate, 19 touchdowns, 8 picks. Hillstead, though, is a good quarterback at times. The turnovers are definitely an issue. 16 turnovers between the two of them in terms of interceptions. That's not fantastic, but I think they do have good wide receivers to throw to. Royals and Vaughn, these guys together have combined for over 150 receptions, and they're at 1,800 yards, or almost about 1,900 yards at this point. 15 yards per catch for Royals, 14 touchdowns for him. Vaughn, 10.5 yards per catch and 10 scores. Micah Davis is also solid, 628, 17.4, and 6 scores. Goes down the depth chart. There are some other solid pieces. This team can run the ball a little bit as well. They have some backs that are solid. This is their offense, 34.1 points per game, 4.83 yards per attempt on the 1.7 yards per play. Some good numbers from this team.
Rushing attack, 40-plus attempts over each of the last 4 games. It's not something you saw often in the first half of the year. So they're certainly putting, extra emphasis on running the football. And this is a nicely balanced attack, 187 yards per game rushing Devon Booth, 734 and 5 scores. Rashad Faison, 688 and 5 scores. Robert Briggs, a nice number 3 at his 400-plus yards. So they got plenty of options here on this offense. This is a unit that certainly has a less than stellar offensive line. They've given up a lot of sacks this year. On the tackle spots have just been big issues for them. All over really seems to be an issue, though. You look at the defenses, Georgia State giving up 31 points per contest this season. This is a team that's not going to be down too many guys, a couple of backups. But for the most part, Jontre Hunter, Justin Abraham, the two leaders for them at their linebacker spots. They both have 7 tackles for loss as well. You look at Kevin Swint, he's one of their top pass rushers. Henry Bryant up front, Javon Dennis. They have some solid players, some veterans they're going to be playing in this game on this side of the ball. You look at what their run defense is able to accomplish, about 144 yards per contest. Not awful, but they did give up 250 plus in two of those games over this 5-game losing streak. They kind of toughened up though against ODU and Georgia Southern. For the most part, Lewis's run defense has been sound. Those are the only real blemishes. A couple games of 150 plus yards, really good in conference play there. But you look at the secondary. This is a unit that certainly have to be big against these great receivers. 287 yards per game. They give up 28 touchdowns. That includes 6 against LSU in the Heisman winner. Obviously, that's a big, tall task of its own. But they were on a streak already of giving up 3+ passing touchdowns in 3 straight games before playing the Tigers. So there's certainly some issues in this secondary. You look at Gavin Pringle, though, 4 picks. He's been really good in the back end. Jeremiah Johnson has another 2 interceptions of his own. One of their top corners, Bryce Brown, he's not going to be playing. He's in the transfer portal. So that's certainly going to be a bit of a loss for them. What do you make of this defense, Nick, that certainly hasn't been very good? Not awful against the run, but they're pretty bad against the pass.
So unit's not good against the pass at all. They have some nice appearance. 0.24 yards per attempt on the ground, 30.8 points per game, 6.36 yards per play. They struggle against the pass, certainly. They have some solid players. Jontre Hunter and Justin Abraham at linebacker are 2 solid players. Hunter, 96 total tackles, 7 tackles for loss, 1.5 sacks, 4 pass breakups. Abraham, 76 total tackles, 7 tackles for loss, 2.5 sacks, 2 pass breakups. For him, some other players on this defensive unit that are solid, right? Javon Dennis is a good player in the backfield, 30 total tackles, 5.5 tackles for loss, 4 sacks. Henry Bryant, 34, 5.5 and 3 sacks for him. Josiah Robinson, 39 total tackles, 3.5 tackles for loss, 2.5 sacks. Gavin Pringle, 4 picks, 4 pass breakups, good numbers there, 37 total tackles. Jermaine Johnson's another solid player for this team, 71 total tackles, 5 tackles for loss. Tyge Leach, 68 total tackles, 5 pass breakups. There are some nice players here, but the ratio is poor, 28 touchdowns, 10 interceptions, just not really good enough, and that could certainly cause some problems for this defense.
Look at the Aggies defense. I think the biggest reason why this spread is still only 1, unless those stars for Georgia State that already committed elsewhere are going to be playing in this game, is that the defense is just not all that good for this team. 34 points per game allowed. They do give up less yards. They're certainly better against the pass, but when you're bad against the run, it's hard to do anything because obviously anything can happen when the ball's in the air. Run defense wasn't all that bad at the start of the year. They did give up 344 to Air Force. Other than that, they were pretty solid until about a month later. San Jose State put up 250 on them. Last 2 games, though, they've given up 352 and 337 to combine 8 touchdowns in those games, over 7 yards per carry. Very, very disappointing numbers. They were able to beat New Mexico in a shootout. They lost by 35 to Boise State. Blaine Spires from his defensive end spot's a good player. MJ Tafazi at linebacker, very good football player. 131 tackles for him. Also one of their top TFL guys. So they have some solid players on this side of the ball. Paul Fitzgerald, a freshman defensive end, Sion Sloan that is. Some of the players they have in the production isn't awful. And even though they're probably going to be rolling out like a 4th-string running back, they're going to have fresh legs in their backfield, Nick, that being Georgia State. And they're still football players at the end of the day. When you're this bad against the run, that's all you need to be is a football player to pick up a lot of ground. And especially with Granger providing his dual threat prowess. This could be an issue for them considering how the last few games went.
It could certainly be an issue. 33.8 points per game given up, 4.79 yards per attempt, and 5.53 yards per play. There are some solid players on this defense, but they just have some struggles as of late. Like you said, this team barely got to bowl eligibility and has struggled over the second half of this season, but there are some nice leaders on this front part of this defense, some good linebackers. Anthony Switzer, 84 total tackles, 8 tackles for loss, 3 sacks for him. MJ Tafalasia is a solid player at middle linebacker as well. 131 in terms of total tackles for him, 7.5 tackles for loss, no sacks, but good numbers. Ike Larson, 92 total tackles, 4.5 tackles for loss. He's a good player coming out in the secondary. There are some solid pieces all over the field. Paul Fitzgerald is another good player, 41 total tackles, 6 tackles for loss, 5 sacks for him. Blaine Spires, 26 total tackles, 8.5 tackles for loss, 5 sacks for him. So there are some nice numbers here. This is a team that does have some decent production in the backfield, but they've struggled against the run as of late. The 199 yards per game on the ground, basically 200 yards per game on the ground, is not a good number.
The secondary, though, on the other hand, has been pretty sound. Boise State only had 8 completions for 93 yards. New Mexico, 17 completions on 44 attempts, 38% opponent rating. I mean, that's very good in terms of opponent completion percentage, 57% on the year. They have given up 24 touchdowns, snagged only 10 picks, and they really struggled the middle part of the season against the pass over the last month plus, though they were very sound. They did give up some big plays against San Diego State, and they were giving up plenty of touchdowns there as well. But this is a secondary, like you said, led by Ike Larson. He's been very good. Vontae Dickerson's a solid corner. In terms of standouts, that's about it. They just have collectively played a good back end. Devin Dye, one of their top safeties, he's not going to be playing, it appears. He's in the portal. Larson, though, with his 4 picks, his ability to make plays with 92 tackles, very good player. He could certainly be a key difference maker here going against a team that doesn't have a lot of production at wide receiver, but they do have 2 solid guys still in Williams and Carter that might be able to pick you apart. I don't think it's really going to happen in this one. Looking at the final thoughts and the prediction, I think for Georgia State, this really has to be the Darian Granger show with some key opt-outs. Attack a vulnerable secondary with your weapons. The run D cannot get dominated. I don't think it will be. I think you're going to see a lot of points in this one. Georgia State will have some success regardless if it's a 4th or 5th string running back, because this run defense has really been that poor. I think Granger's certainly going to make some big plays with his legs as well. So I think they'll give up some points. I think Utah State, though, with their wide receivers, regardless of the QB situation, I think they'll be all right in that category. They're going to be able to find a lot of space. They're going to run away with this one. I think we're going to see a lot of points, though. The line, though, is very confusing with Carroll and Robert Lewis not playing for, the Panthers.
I agree. This line doesn't make a whole lot of sense here. This is going to be a high-scoring affair. These are 2 teams that are not very good on defense and questionable offenses. I don't know where the Georgia State points are going to come from, but they'll find a way. Like you said, this Utah State run defense is so bad that you could really plug anybody in. If you wanted to plug yourself in there, you probably get a couple hundred yards on the ground, maybe had some success there. This is a deep, fantastic against the run and all. They struggle in every as of late, and it's certainly a problem for this team. Top 2 players on offense, to SEC programs in Missouri and Auburn. That's a tough blow, but that's what happens in this kind of bowl era and transportal era. Opt-outs, guys miss. It's what goes on here. This is a tough break for Georgia State. They're a solid team that had a decent season, Utah State as well. This is just kind of a low-tier bowl here between 2 teams that are heading in kind of weird directions that don't have a whole lot to go on. I'll take Utah State at this point, though. I think it will be a close game at times. I just think the defenses will let both teams down. It'll be a high-scoring affair.
Also, Utah State, much better travel arrangements than coming all the way from Atlanta, Georgia, to a very cold, rainy Idaho. I think that's a pretty big factor that we also need to talk about, Nick. I just don't know why this spread is so close. I'll be hammering Utah State all day.
Yeah, I love Utah State. I think this is a great opportunity to put some nice points on this. I wouldn't go anything crazy, but you're looking, high 20s, 30s would probably be a good spot for this game.
High 30s for me. That's me for today's episode. Make sure you guys like, comment, subscribe. See you next time.